you have an example of a game or games with good mechanics that made up for a lack of story?
NBA 2K, any of them. I'm
Mm,
sorry, but their stories sometimes be trash as hell, but those
mm.
mechanics are hella fun, especially when
Shout
you
out to
mu
NBA ballers who tried to give a story to basketball, even
right?
though that didn't kind of go where it should have went. But get head back to the 2K. I just wanted to shout that out because they did try.
They
Somebody
did,
tried to
they
do
tried. Here's the thing, I'll
it.
give it to them, they do put stories in it, and the stories are like, I'm sorry to say, they basic. "Oh, you're a good player from high school or college, and then you get into the NBA." It's the same story over and over again, except you just
Right.
get to be, like, the self-insert, which for some, that's all they need. For me, I needed, like, a little bit more. After a while, I
Yeah.
just kinda made it like my own story in my own head, but the mechanics, tight, great mechanics. Like, I can't
Yeah.
deny it. Even people who say these are like cookie cutter games, like, "Oh, it's just the same game." Yeah, but they make those mechanics, sometimes they tweak them in a way that just feels really nice. Like, a game on the Switch that I really enjoyed was the NBA, what you call it? I don't know, it was like playing NBA Jam all over again, where it was just 2
Mm,
on 2, and it was just slam dunking, it was just fun. It was just pure
mm,
fun. No story.
mm.
Didn't pay attention to any story at all. Straight mechanic. I was just playing legendary ballers, just straight up dunking on people. That is a game where I didn't need a story to have fun with it, and it was just pure mechanics, and I was, like, loving that. And it's weird that it's the sports games for me when it comes to that. The games that I
Yeah.
don't need a story for are the ones that honestly kinda be the most fun, even though I don't play them too heavy. I'm learning
And,
a little bit
and,
about myself today. Was not expecting that.
and that's very interesting. I like that you said 2K. Because I want to say that in recent 2Ks, they have definitely tried to take that NBA bowler idea and bring it into 2K. Um, as far as giving you some type of background story. If I'm not mistaken, and you can correct me if I'm wrong as the
You've been
more prominent
corrected. You're
2K
fine.
player,
I already corrected you. You did. You're good.
as the more adept and experienced 2K player here.
Not by much. Don't get me wrong. I've only beaten like 2 of the games.
I feel as though the more recent ones did involve a story where you were like, you started off in the city, you had to play on the courts, you had to play on the streets and win there, and then, make it, do your thing in high school and do your thing, in the NBA, et cetera, et cetera. You get to go to like, these little my part, but then you also get to go to like actual gyms where you can practice your skill. Like
True.
you get to like kind of explore this little city outside of actually being um just the NBA star in
Yeah,
the
true.
actual court.
And it
Um
is the most boring part of the game. It is
is
the
it
most boring part. Like, oh, like after a certain game, if you lose, you could hear them judging how you were playing and all this other stuff. I thought that was pretty interesting. But after
right,
that, just put me in the next basketball game so I can play again. Like,
right,
the story isn't even like the forefront. Like every time I play a 2K game, I'm literally playing to make my character better. So I can take it out onto like the online place, play on there, see how I'm competing, and then go back
right,
and practice. It's the weirdest
right,
thing. I could literally do that in real life, but I refuse to because I'd rather do it on 2K, I guess. I don't know.
right,
It's the one
right,
game where I don't hate the story, I just don't care about it.
right,
I know somebody out there does. I just don't. Just like
right.
how you don't care for Stray, even though Stray is actually a pretty good game. Low
Yeah,
mechanics, good story.
I'll leave Stray alone because Stray is a Stray. It's a Stray game.
That
What
people love.
what I'll say is this. One, I guess we can say that for the entire genre that is sports games in general. So this same thing applies to Madden, NHL, it applies to MLB, it applies to FIFA.
Can we still call it
It,
FIFA? They no longer have the license to the name anymore. But
well,
we're gonna call it like
insert new name.
something
Until
sports
then,
club.
right? Until then, what we refer to what we currently know as FIFA and will be changed later. Like that whole um
Genre?
genre is mechanics driven without a story.
True.
Um, the way that games kind of got hot, which is golden era, the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, like that, the entire arcade element. was just consistently good mechanics with no story,
I give you that
right?
one. Yeah, I'm thinking about
Donkey
time in arcades.
Kong doesn't really have a story. Yes, you got to save Peach, but the, Donkey Kong doesn't really have a story.
I
Um,
feel like it does have a story. It tells the story without telling you the story directly. Like when you turn on the game, a random monkey shows up, it has a lady, and you already know the hero's tale. Well, you got to go save the lady. There's your story right there. There's your motivation. Like, gonna be honest, I don't know this lady from any other lady. Why am I saving this one? You can fill in the space yourself. There's a
because
story there.
it's also a long term goal for the game. So it's
Mhm.
like it also it doubles, right? Like, but there's no real story. There's no introduction when you get there. You're a magical dude that can jump real high, and here is this dude that stole the girl that you were with just yesterday, and now you need to get her back. You don't get all that information. All you get is, like you said, monkey with the girl. You're here. Dodge the barrels. Jump. Avoid. Do what you got to do. Yeah, that goes for even when Mario becomes his own game. Pac-Man is a perfect game that literally has no story. Like,
Ooh,
what is the story of Pac-Man, really? But you have two main mechanics: you move and you eat. There's a purpose for all of them, right? Like, you move to eat, you move to avoid, but all you do is move and eat. There's really no story. Pong, we brought up
oh yeah.
off camera.
Oh,
There's no
Pong is
story for
tennis.
Pong,
Pong is tennis. You could build a story out of
right?
that.
But there is no story. So
There's
it's
no
like,
initial story. You're right.
but it was still an incredible game.
I
I spoke
mean,
about this earlier.
it's a game. I'm gonna give it
For,
that.
for,
Eh?
its, for, for,
Incredible has
for, its,
changed now.
for its time,
For its time.
let
For its time. Yeah.
me make that clear.
But you ain't
And
beating. You ain't breaking no records now, Pong. Where you at? Step it up. Where the graphics upgrade?
the entire arcade catalog, um,
Ooh. I would have said the
everything you ever played in
entire
the
arcade
arcade.
catalog. Some of them have stories. Mortal Kombat had a story.
Mortal Kombat has zero story in the
What?
arcade when you first start playing it.
When you start playing it, you're joining the tournament of the Mortal Kombat. You're fighting for Earthrealm.
I didn't get over that
Really?
from the game. I really didn't. I just put my quarter in. I
Oh,
jumped
well,
in
you
there.
put your quarter in. I didn't. I read it because I didn't have quarters, so I was reading the screen, and
Oh,
the screen was
gotcha,
telling me there was a whole reason for it. It was
gotcha,
story
gotcha,
for
gotcha.
me. Us broke
But
folk got story. I guess you, Mister, I got
it,
quarters, and I could just
Nah, I
play.
just went in there, I put the quarter in, and I started. You start at, you fight whoever, you beat him, and you keep going up until you know what I'm saying?
I feel like
And
that's a story. That's a classic tournament arc.
that's a goal.
It
That's
is.
a
That's
goal.
the tournament
These,
arc.
these are these are short-term and long-term goals that the player must achieve in order to complete the gameplay loop that you
Yeah.
spoke about.
In design terms, yeah, but you remove design helmet, bro. That's your anime protagonist arc, what do you call it?
That's
Tournament
that's
arc,
that's
fighting
that's
your
your
way to the
imagine
top.
that's your imagination creating a story from
And
outside
that's the
stimulus.
best part.
But
I'm in this
we
industry
now
to build that, baby. That's need that.
I agree, but we're not debating that. The
True.
point is that there's a lack of a story, not necessarily that there's no story at all,
That's
but
true. I'll give
their
you that.
story is not necessarily the focus. To bring it to something more recent,
Okay.
I don't know if you played Maneater by Tripwire.
That's the one with the
Um,
shark?
yeah,
Yeah, that was fun one.
so that was probably the last game I played that was really, really just fun.
Oh,
And there is
a
a
game,
story.
a fun that's just a fun game.
Yeah, there is a story about Scaly Pete, and he killed your mom and then threw you out back into the water, and then you had to survive in the bayou with the crocodiles. But there's not really a story. The story is really like a thin wire that's just keeping everything in it, keeping everything in sync with the main idea of the game, rather.
I feel you.
As far as the game, it's Tiny Planet version 2,
Here's
right?
here's something I always like to call that. As games advance, there will always be a moment where you create a video game as video game. That's what I consider like games where there's like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. We understand that, but it's just fun. Like video game as games.
They tied
Trademark one.
in, yeah,
There's a
but they
story,
tied in a story to make it make sense. But it wasn't about, who cared about Scaly Peep. I'm a shark,
and
and
I'm
like I said,
Scaly.
it's Tiny Planet Me too, right? You keep consuming things that are smaller than you until you become big enough to consume things that were once bigger than you. And like that was, there was so much satisfaction in eating a bunch of barracuda and trout and stuff like that until I was big enough to take on a crocodile, until I could take on a mako, until I'm the biggest thing in the ocean and an orca can't even mess with me, right? Like that's when you know when you're
Mm.
taking out blue whales or sperm whales and orcas and you're like, yeah, you in the deep with it.
You know.
There's a point in the game. Hey, there's a point in the game where you come out the open sea, right?
Mhm.
And you see a orca, and man, it put the fear of God in you from a game perspective, right? Because you know you ain't big enough, and if this thing come over here, and of course, they captured so well um, the feeling of open water and being in the deep sea, and um, if you know anything about killer whales, like killer whales kill sharks,
Oh
right? They
yeah.
kill everything. Really, like
They
they're
earned the
really
name. They got them those aren't eyes on its face. Those are teardrop tattoos. It's letting you know what's up. Those
yeah,
ain't those, they ain't joking. They bully
they're
the ocean.
probably more dangerous than actual sharks, but we don't have no orca movie, which I want to see. But
I
but
would
going
love
back
to
to the point
see I would
of
love to
orca
see
movie,
a
right?
gang related orca movie.
That would be dope. That would be
The
dope.
Atlantic orcas versus the Indian orcas. I'll be like, hey yo, what you doing in my neighborhood?
yeah,
Oh, if you can
no,
make it happen, put
but
the
no,
bandanas on
but
the orcas. Make the video. I'm trying to watch.
yeah, but you got the feeling still when you came out as a shark and you came into this open water, and the first thing you see is this black and white sea cow just moving back and forth, and you're like, I'm a shark. This thing is my natural predator. Usually, I'm apex predator here, but in this particular space, in this particular situation, this is the apex predator, and you feel it, and until you become the biggest thing moving in the ocean, and you feel that,
Mm, that's
you
what I call
feel that,
good game mechanics when you get that
yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, you feel that.
Well, can
Mhm.
mechanics? I'm thinking in a game like that where the mechanics technically is leading the story. Like the story isn't really the main focus. In a game like that where mechanics are pretty much setting you up to pretty much fulfill your own power fantasy in that aspect.
Yeah, yeah.
I I know that's a valid way to tell a story, but would you say it should be the premier way of telling stories? Like what would be the best way to present your stories if you're like creating a just a video game ass game? What would be your premier way of doing it? Would you tell the story through mechanics specifically, or would you do it through like, oh well, I got a story I want to tell, but there's moments where I'll bring it up and tell it, and then let the players have fun, and then bring up the story again. What would be your preferred way as the brains of the situation?
It 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 honestly just depends because what you're saying is we're making a video game as video game. Uh,
So fun is the main objective.
so then, if that's the case, and we're using Maneater, we're using Mario, we're using Pac-Man, we're using games that we got lost in. Kirby was one of the first games that I got exposed to. We're using the methodology behind those games, which were 100% mechanics driven. The story really just explained the mechanics back then. Like nowadays, the mechanics explain the story, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Right? That's really the whole point of this episode to explore you know that whole idea of story versus mechanics if there's even a versus or if
I mean,
but
story
at the
will
end of
win
the
hands down, no question asked. But that's besides.
I don't know that because here we have these games that we're talking about even now that are specifically mechanics driven, and the story is only to tie in why the mechanics are this way, so you don't you get the immersion of it. So if we're saying anything, story is necessary for immersion for sure because as a player, you're gonna need an explanation. Why can't I only run and jump and move in this one direction? And that's not necessarily explained to you through somebody telling you, "Hey, you're Mario, and Mario is only able to move in this direction because he's got trapped in a TV, and you don't." Like it's
True.
just a game. You can
But
move this way,
but
and
humans love stories. Whether you like it or not, humans love stories. That's the one thing that will always surpass. Like we have so many things. Like textbooks will give you full explanations on why things work, but you would rather hear it through a story. Story is the best way to portray information. So We can have mechanics, but story is
I don't know.
is the great justifier.
I don't know that we disagree there, or that we're on opposing sides there. I My perfect example is when we were kids, right?
Mhm.
And this is definitely analog game related, but when we were kids, we spent a lot of time playing tag. And tag is a game. Tag, freeze tag, hide and seek, manhunt. These are games we spent a lot of time playing. During recess, after school, when we were with
Before
our friends.
school,
And there's no story to tag.
it was skill
Like,
based, you're right.
right, there is zero. So honestly, you'll play a game
Good point.
that's all mechanics, and you'll have a lot of fun, and there'll be no story. There's no story to hide and
Right.
seek.
You creating a
And,
story. Now you got something to talk about when you're at school. Be like, "Bro, so there I was. Bro, they couldn't catch me. I was too fast. Broke his ankles. I'm just crazy." You just created a story playing the game. You're right. Started without one, but you created one. Because I'm not gonna lie, your boy was killing it. I had to tell the boys about it.
but it's not needed to have fun.
It's not needed, but it adds extra.
It's immersion. For example, hide and seek is hide and seek.
True.
Dead by Daylight
Ooh, I
is
like where
hide and seek.
I get where you're going
But
for.
here's an entire reason to hide, and here's an entire reason to seek. Because
Okay,
now,
okay, okay, okay,
you
okay.
understand what I'm saying?
Yep,
So it doesn't hit.
now I'm about to drop it on you real quick. Hide and seek.
Mhm.
Why are we playing it?
Why are we playing hide and seek?
It's an evolutionary thing that we developed to teach ourselves how to survive before time. Hide and seek was clearly a game for kids, but it was an evolutionary reason why we played it, why we enjoyed it. We had to learn at a time when we didn't have a way to defend ourselves so easily. We needed to learn to hide, how to seek things, how to do things, and we kind of turned it into a game. So technically, in a weird way, the story came before the mechanic. I'm just playing. I'm just stretching. I'm stretching for that one. It's a reach. But
I was gonna say, because then what you're kind of working against your point
yeah,
here,
no, I
because
am. I as I
here,
was saying it.
here we are creating mechanics in order to tell the story.